Hello, welcome to my channel. This video is on my process of this oil painting. It'll be in a time lapse. Hopefully you enjoy it and maybe learn something as well. So I'm starting off by just putting paint down on canvas, blocking in the shapes, and you can still come back on later layers and change things multiple times. Here's a list of the colors of my palette. I'm using a toned down blue cobalt with white and a touch of crimson. I'm placing this blue colour all throughout my painting as it's creating some tonal harmony. If we use the same colours throughout, everything will belong together. They'll have the same shadow tones and the same highlight tones. It really sells that you're looking at the same scene. Using that same blue colour for my shadows under the grass and under these poles. I'm indicating that the sun is above but to the left. Now I'm blocking in another layer of blue, and this time there's some cerulean mixed in for the ocean colour. And I'm just putting in indications of shape and depth. These simple layers of midtones and highlights will show that depth. Still blend it all in. Layers will really sell that it's water. I'm blending in the horizon line, but I will be fading it into the sky in a later layer. I'm using that same blue onto the wave to keep that harmony of colour, but I'm mixing in some phthalo blue for shadows under the whitewash. I do end up changing the shape of this wave and deviating slightly from my reference photo, so you will see some changes. I'm conscious of placing reflections of the sky onto the face of the wave. This is to sell that illusion of the shape. And with a light hand, I'm also placing a lighter version of this blue to indicate a reflection of the whitewash above in those crashing areas. If you use multiple different tones, you can sell volume and depth. The water has currents, and so we can indicate movements in the water just by using different colours, the direction it's flowing, if it's messy water or if it's calm, still water. So I'm using a combination of all of the three blue colours here, my phthalo, which is the darkest, cerulean and cobalt. Now I'm using a toned down blue to block in the water. I'm starting with the darkest colour here in this layer. Feel free to add a lot of intrigue into your paintings. Don't stick to the colours in the reference. If you see browns or reds, add them in different places and make it unique. Sometimes in the water there's seaweed or something causing different tones to shine through. If you make a mistake, you can always paint over it. Put a rock in, make it look like it's on purpose. I'm using the edge of an angled brush here. I'm using a toned down white with some crimson and some blue. So it almost looks purple, and I'm still using that colour in the whitewash on the waves as well. I'm holding back any details, so I'm using a larger brush and just utilising the sharp edge. Here in this section, I've mixed in a little bit of sienna and it brings it forward in contrast with that blue tones of the water. And it's selling that it's sort of sitting on top. Now everything's settled a little bit and I'm coming back in with another layer. I'm using a smaller brush now to add details and create specific shapes and form. I'm using straight titanium white for the edge of the whitewash, and it really pops now against those darker tones underneath it. It's bringing it forward. In my reference photo there is a beautiful crisp edge here. I'm flipping my brush around as I see the paint being placed down, and I'm keeping it sharp and intentional on the edge of the bristles. The close-up here shows that in contrast with the straight white, the reflection tone that I've placed on the wave, it isn't that bright. It's only an indication. You want to save your white for areas that you really want to pop and really utilize temperature as well. Here I'm showing how I've placed it going into the wave, just to connect the waves. This whitewash is from the previous wave that crashed and it hasn't cleared up enough before the next set rolls in. Be careful with the placement of these highlights. I'm laying them on the previously established areas. I don't want to paint over my shadows too much and muddy it up. And I'm placing small little snake-like highlights now, just to connect this section of whitewash to the crashing wave in front. Now, I've changed my mind with this wave. I've stood back and decided that it's a little bit too big. I want to make it smaller and push it back. I also changed the left section so that it can be a barrel. I love painting barrels and waves. They're so beautiful in person and we don't really get to see them for very long. They're so special. So this was purely just a preference. So I added in a barrel here rather than a crashing wave. I always make a habit of taking breaks, stepping away from my painting regularly. This keeps your eyes fresh. So each time I add shadows, it's because I've stepped back and thought it needs it. It's looking flat. And it gives you the chance to change your mind on things and make those changes too. Now I'm adding phthalo blue and it's almost straight out of the tube. It's such a rich colour, it absolutely pops and it really stands out. Now that it's a barrel wave, I've adjusted the water just below it to make it look like it's been sucked into the wave. Colour can completely change the way you see the other colours around it. It can trick your eye. The blue behind this wave now looks a bit green. and very flat. So I adjust the whole tone of this water section in upcoming layers. Now I'm using a thinned out whitewash with raw sienna and burnt umber in there, just to deepen that sand colour before I start on the grass. I've mixed up a deep brown tone, and I'm using a fan brush for the grass, moving it around and getting variation in my brush strokes. I want it to look breezy so everything can be going in its own direction. It can show some movement, some wind. I don't recommend painting in the dark. I mixed up different tones for the grass. This is a raw sienna with a little bit of blue, so it's still very warm, but it is slightly green. And here I'm using a plastic palette knife. I'm gently scraping off the wet paint that I've just laid, so that sand colour will be exposed again. It just gives an indication of wispy individual pieces of long grass blowing in the wind. Adding some more green, different colours, and scraping them away. Adding in some more depth. After stepping back from the painting, I decided that the water behind the wave is looking a little bit out of place and boring, so I'm adding some sets of waves coming in. Shorter and closer together lines on the horizon will show that they're far away, and if you gradually widen and spread them out, it'll sell that illusion of distance. I'm adding a highlight tone very close to the sky's colour to reflect the sky. I'm adding a thinned out, more of a glaze layer of cobalt blue and a touch of phthalo just to blend everything together. You can't see it very well in camera, but when you look at the painting, all these layers are still visible and shine through. I'm not covering up my previous work, it's like I'm putting a filter on top. These highlights do get blended in later, but I'm leaving them as is so they can settle in those spots. I'm using a sandy colour with white and raw sienna on a brush that I've hacked and chopped into. I'm using a dry brush technique and it gives a perfect look for grass. I'm continuing to add shadows on the sand as well. I'm adding these shadows in the sand, maybe they're footprints or ripples from the wind. And more shadows for the grass in a bluey grey colour. I have 3 different tones here, building up in depth. I want it to look like movement of the grass above causing these shadows, and it'll be quite vague with its shape. Now this white colour has some yellow added in, and the warmth is bringing it forward and popping it out next to the grey purple tones next to it. This whitewash colour has some yellow added in, and the warmth is really popping it and pushing it forward, especially next to those grey purpley tones. I'm placing it to the left to show the direction of the sun. It's above but slightly to the left. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is a brand new channel and I have a few more videos up and coming, so be sure to subscribe.